And I'm here with Eben Britton, who's the host of Hotboxin with Mike Tyson. He's a writer, philosopher. And if you do not follow him on Instagram yet, please do yourself a favor. Eben, welcome to the Optimal Performance Podcast.
Hey, my brother. Thanks for having me.
So I came across your friend and mine, Harold Turk, who was on the podcast a couple of months ago, and he's a Maori body worker.
Yeah.
And I heard his name from you, from following you on social media, and then
Oh,
hooked up with him and was like, dude, I love what you're doing. This looks amazing.
yeah.
And so I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your story, sharing your network, and telling people about the healers that are available to us, because now is the time for great healing. And so I just wanted to start by showing gratitude for you speaking your truth, because it is really refreshing.
Thanks, brother. I
Yeah.
didn't know that's how you got connected to Harold.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harold has been, super beneficial for me and my healing journey since coming out of football. And, I think that work in particular is really tapped into a truth that I learned through my career in football and brutalizing my body, and what I came to and the knowledge I've sort of accumulated. It really resonates in Harold's work. And, we could get into that overarching idea more, but Harold is the real deal for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. His approach, the way that he thinks about linking the body with emotions and doing work at processing. We have these bodies, and
Yeah,
they get traumatized one way or another. They
yeah,
get beat up, they get neglected, they get overfed or underfed, or
yeah.
underused or overused. And yeah, so well, that's cool. I'm glad you now know how I found Harold.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, just, this is one of my things that is becoming, I'm really being confronted with in this coronavirus time. Is we've been so indoctrinated with this idea that everything is so compartmentalized. There's our body over here, there's our mind over here, there's our thoughts over here. Food doesn't matter. What you put in your body doesn't matter, because there's a pill to take care of it, there's a shot to take care of it. Go on living however the fuck you want to live. Don't worry about it. The medical establishment will have an answer for you, whether it's a pill or a shot or a drug, etc. at the end of the day. And it's just so it's such a false paradigm, of thought that we've been coaxed into over the years. And it's just, if you, as you begin to, because we all deal with trauma, and we all deal with pain in our lives. We all have obstacles to overcome, inner and external. And if you think that, this body is separate from your childhood traumas, you've got another thing coming, because all that shit, it's just trapped in here.
Yeah.
We're just moving vessels of our life,
Hmm.
you know? It's like everything that happens to us, good and bad, gets stored in these tissues. That's what this body is. And the deeper you go into yourself and into sort of letting go of the materiality that we live in, the shedding of that skin, the constant sort of disillusion, the dissolving of, your ideas about how the world functions, you come to this realization that, like, even because quantum physics has proven all of this stuff, that, it's infinite. And this body is just a manifestation of everything else, just like everything else, and so again, it's all connected. Everything matters.
Yeah.
Literally everything matters.
Yeah.
So anyway, man, I don't want to go too deep right off the bat, but
We just
yeah,
did, man.
I'm pretty fucking, I'm just this is such a strange time. I think that people are so asleep that they don't even realize they've stepped into a science fiction movie,
Yeah.
where our government is literally looking at mandating what we can and can't do. And medicine is really the ultimate tool of control, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we have such a fear of death.
Yeah.
We fail to recognize in this, in our very primitive spiritual culture that we've created around ourselves, we have refused to accept death as a natural part of the life process, and that's really what guides a lot of this shit. Because
Yeah.
everyone's like, oh, I'm going to get sick and I'm going to die. Well, what if you step back for a second and you look at how many people are dying on a daily basis anyway from everything else that life has to offer, you know?
Yeah. That level of awareness to cut through, and I've demonized culture in the past, but culture, I'm a big Terrence McKenna fan, and Terrence, one of my favorite Terrence
So,
McKenna quotes is, culture is not your friend. And when I when I first heard that, I was like, oh man, like, but I like shoes. I
Mhm.
like sports. Like, is that okay? It's okay to like shoes. It's okay to like sports, but it isn't my friend. It isn't here to take care of me. It isn't here to connect with me on a deeper level. Uh, I want to back up a little bit, uh,
Yeah.
because your journey from a career in the NFL to, the first time, I didn't follow your NFL career, but I did see Take Your Pills, the Netflix documentary, which kind of like blew my mind. And then, I kind of watched you kind of pop up here and there, and continuously and incessantly share your story, tell your truth, speak your truth. And so I'm a little curious as to how you got into a place in which you transitioned your life from one lane into infinite number of other lanes.
Mm.
I'm wondering when that moment kind of came for you as the host of Hotboxin, as an advocate for cannabis, as a sharer of the toad. Like, how did that journey unfold for you? Because I think a lot of us want to travel a similar journey.
Mm. Um, well, from the time I was a little kid, I have this internal knowing. It's like a blueprint of sort of understanding. And you can call it a guiding light, a gravity, um, just an ultimate sense of things, sense of myself, sense of what I'm supposed to do, who I am, where I'm supposed to be. And, you know, my childhood was deeply affected by my parents' divorce, my mother's alcoholism, my father's untreated depression and anxiety, and not having a ton of stability in that childhood. And then one day, but like still always knowing that I had something to offer and I had something to contribute to the world, to share with the world. And somewhere along the line, I remember I was very little. I was at my grandparents' house in Connecticut, and I'm watching the TV, during the summer, and it's the Jets and the Giants training camp. And I remember seeing that and just falling in love with the vision of becoming one of these armored heroes, one of these warriors. You know, I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And funny enough, my mother would never let me play until I was in my freshman year of high school. Finally, she let me play football. She was like, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt. And then finally I had my dad help me convince her to let me play. And, you know, literally as soon as I stepped on the field, you know, all the coaches were like, if this dude works, if you work hard enough, telling my parents, if this kid works hard enough, he could play on Sundays. You know, he'll be buying you a house in 10 years. And so football became this like savior. I was so angry and pissed off, and, you know, because of sort of the environment that I had come up in, you know, alcoholism, depression. You know, I grew up in really a family of men, but there was a lot of like that masculine bullying and pushing and constantly just being fucking tested, you know. And I felt like, you know, and football became this vessel to help me prove to the world how fucking big and badass I was and how tough I was. And, you know, so in high school, started getting all the scholarship offers. So the dream perpetuated itself, you know. But that being said, like from the time I was 13, everything I did, you talk about manifestation and visualization, everything I did in my mind's eye was about seeing myself getting drafted to play in the NFL. How I ate, how I trained, you know, how I watched film, how I studied the game, etc. Like I was just absorbed in it, you know, and it turned me into the greatest player I could possibly be, you know. And then I made it to the NFL and I reached the top of this mountain that I'd been climbing for so long. And I was like, fuck, is this it? You know, this is it. Here I am. I don't feel whole. I still have more to prove. I've got more to prove now. There's never enough, you know. I'm never enough. I never did enough. You know, I've got the car, I've got the house, I've got whatever I want. And I'm still miserable. I'm maybe the most miserable I've ever been in my life. You know, and through that process of being in the NFL, I fell in love. I got married. I had a daughter. Well, I'll put it back in the proper order. I fell in love, had a daughter, got married, you know, and God bless my wife. She's just, you know, my guardian angel. And my daughter is just like, brings me to tears to think about, you know, what she means to me. And, you know, and so I had enough. 6 years in the NFL, man. I beat my body to shit. Back surgery, shoulder surgery. My back surgery, I came back from that. My third year was playing my ass off. 10, 11 weeks into the season, I'm paralyzed from the waist down because I've got an infection in the disc where the surgery was. So I've got to go on 8 weeks of intravenous antibiotics. Fucking, you know, you talk about probably a career ender, but I ended up pushing it through and got 3 more years in, you know, just because it was my life, you know. And through that process, you know, also seeing the business of football. I've always been just, I'm a loyalist. You know, I have a lot of honor. I, you know, carry myself in a way where, you know, I had a lot of respect and love for my teammates and my coaches. Like these were my family, you know. And I came into the NFL and I had a solid rookie year. Going into my second year, I herniated the disc, L5S1, really fucked me up. In the midst of that, you know, trying to like grind through that, because it really you know, it was like the end of OTAs, the spring practices. I, you know, injured this disc. I herniated this disc. And, you know, my right leg was completely useless, you know, and I spent basically up until week 6, when, thank God, my shoulder got dislocated twice in the game against the Chiefs, where finally my season was just over. I was in misery, dealing with this injury, this back injury, sciatic pain running down my leg. I couldn't feel my foot on the ground. So I missed the second half of that season, my second season. Coming into my third season, my back is still fucked up, but I've had the shoulder surgery to repair that. In the midst of that, I'm having all sorts of experiences with, my own personal reactions to opiates, taking these opiates after surgery. This is where I started to learn about, what these things did to you. Forget about the fact that, just to play in a NFL season, 99% of the guys in the locker room are taking a daily regimen of some prescription anti-inflammatory or another every day, multiple times a day, whether that's Cataflam, Indocin, Celebrex, etc., you name it, shit that's just tearing up your digestive system, your liver and kidneys. But then I was on this regimen of opiates, following my shoulder surgery. And even, you're taking them after games, but that's just like to take the edge off. You're given an envelope of pills getting on and off the plane, coming in and out of the locker room, so you're just popping those like, hey, this is how I can't play unless I have this. But really like experiencing the rage and the irritability, the sleeplessness, at the end of the day, the painkillers don't do anything for the pain. They put you in a worse situation than you were in before you took them. And so I was like, fuck that, I'm just going to smoke weed.
Oh yeah.
Because intuitively and that's the thing, going back to this inner knowing, it was like intuitively I can smoke weed. Yes, this is illegal, or I could be ostracized if anyone found out I did this, but I wake up the next day feeling better. Now I trust my intuition over trusting what this outside of me is telling me I should do. Yeah. But that's just me, and maybe I'm blessed because of who my parents were, or just my experience on that road. I was like, I'm taking these pills, they make me feel like shit. I get a fucking migraine. I'm being an asshole to the people who are taking care of me, my wife, my mother, like asshole, my brother, cursing at people, and that's, and that's a side effect of taking things like Vicodin or, Oxycontin, etc. And I was just really aware of that. I was like, wow, I am just not myself when I take this. Like it's a hair trigger to the rage, And with cannabis, it was never like that. It was like I actually felt better. I decompressed. I was able to sleep through the night, etc. Wake up feeling better. So I was like, that's interesting. And I followed that throughout my, really from the time, I think, the first time I consumed cannabis when I was a teenager. I remember it always being a good experience.
Yeah.
I've had really intense highs that were very scary trips, but the after effect was always very positive. Body felt good. Mind felt clear, So by the time by the time I got to Chicago, so I spent 4 years in Jacksonville. My last year in Jacksonville, more of the business of football took over. I'd worked my ass back after that, intravenous, the back infection that really just should have ended my career, to be honest. But I worked my ass off, got back, was starting by the beginning of my 4th season. And then game 1, we're in Minnesota. I get a guy thrown into my left ankle. It's a low high ankle sprain. Really bad, can barely put pressure on it. I missed like the next 4 games, come back way too early, still couldn't even move to my right. because my left foot was so destroyed. But they rushed me back. You know, they're like, Eb, you should be back. You should be ready. You know, and all week I'm saying, guys, I'm not ready. I can't move. Go into the game against one of the best pass rushers in the league, this guy, Geno Atkins. I'm playing left guard, get my fucking ass kicked. I get benched at halftime, you know, and that was really like the final betrayal for me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they never really explained to me why, you know, they never acknowledged that I was injured the whole year, you know, and they rushed me back, and I felt betrayed. You know, I felt totally like the entire idea of what I believed in for so long was just, it meant nothing. It meant
Mm.
nothing to them because this is a business to them, you know. And so, you know, that was supposed to be a year where I was working for a new contract. And by the end of it, really, I was like, I think I'm done with football. I'm done playing. You know, I talked to my wife. She's like, hey, whatever you want to do, that's cool with me. I'm on your team, you know, no
Mm.
matter what you want to do. I talked to my, you know, I talked to my dad. I talked to some of my teammates, some of the older guys. Brad Meester, who's like a 10-year veteran center, one of my great mentors during my time in the NFL. And he was like, hey man, look, I totally get it, dude. Trust me, every year I'm like, I'm not coming back.
Mm.
You know, but he's like, maybe you sign with a new team. Maybe you find you love it again. You know, maybe you find your love for the sport again somewhere else, you know. But and then you at least you gave it a shot, you know, and you can say definitively, I'm done, or let's keep it going, you know. So um I did. I gave it a shot. I went into free agency. I had a couple of workouts. I ended up with the Bears. That first year in Chicago was pretty magical. You know, I fell in love with the game again. I realized I became like the sixth O lineman, swing tackle, and then I was also playing monster tight end. So I'd come in like 20 to 30 snaps a game at tight end, which was really fun. And they wrote, by the end of the year, they wrote this whole article about how much more productive the offense was when I was in there
Mm.
than when I wasn't, which was pretty cool. And so coming out of that year, I was sort of sucked back into this idea of, you know, what it was. And, you know, I was going into free agency again. And I thought that maybe I'd get a solid deal coming out of that. Didn't really. Ended up signing back for one more year with Chicago. And that year was really the year that showed me, you know what, you're done. I'm done. You know, this was plenty. I tore my hamstring like second day of pads and training camp, ended up getting cut after the last preseason game, which devastated me because I loved this group of coaches. And again, I'd fallen into the trap of football as a family. You know, in the NFL, it is until it's business, you
Sure.
know. And so, you know, they actually signed me back after week one. It was sort of some sort of vindication for me when, you know, three of my buddies went down in the first half against the Bills of game one, and the GM is on the phone with me saying, Eb, we need you back. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. You know, and so I come back, but that year was, you know, it was really the year of like, this is the end. You know, my appendix exploded
Jesus.
during the bye week. My wife, daughter, and I flew from Chicago back to LA because they were retiring my jersey at my high school. And I'm like doubled over. I've got this, like, I'm starting to feel sick. Like I'm feeling sick, like kind of throughout the day. It was Halloween day. And they're doing this ceremony for me, and there's a game afterwards. And I'm like feeling just weird. Like I've got kind of like cold sweats going. Like I feel like I've got, you know, I kind of feel like I have to shit, but I can't. And there's kind of a pain in my side. And it got progressively worse. And by the end, I had to leave the game because I was doubled over, just like throwing up.
Jeez.
And we were staying at this Airbnb in LA, and it was my whole family was there, you know, and I couldn't be a part of it. And I refused to go to the emergency room for like 2 days.
Jeez.
And the day we're supposed to fly back, I'm like, dude, there's something seriously wrong. I'm not just sick. Like, there's something wrong with me. And so we go to the emergency room like the morning we're supposed to fly back, of course. That's a lesson to all y'all out there. If something is telling you something's not right, something's definitely not right, you know. So go to the emergency room, have to have an emergency appendectomy. I end up spending 5 days in the hospital in LA, miss that week of practice, have to call up everybody and tell them what happened. I fly back, I've lost like 25 pounds.
Whoa.
And then I finished out the rest of that season, tested positive for Ritalin, which is what Take Your Pills talks about.
Right.
You know, I took Ritalin on a day when I didn't have my Adderall prescription, and I thought, hey, it treats the same thing. They both treat ADHD. I had a therapeutic use exemption to take Adderall for my ADHD, which was all through the team, etc. So I took a Ritalin thinking it was probably the same. And if I even did test positive, then I'd have a good argument. You know, by the end of the season, I get a letter that I failed a drug test for Ritalin. You know, I go into the thing and they slap me with a 4-game suspension anyway. And, you know, I took it as a sign from the universe that, hey, man, you know, you can be done if you want to.
Yeah. And then it was time to decide what came next. Then it was time to figure out what you wanted to be, who you wanted to be, what you wanted to do.
Yeah. And so, you know, God bless my wife. She's an attorney. She had just taken the California bar, passed it. So I thought, let's head back to California. Let's set up shop there. Who knows? At the time, I hadn't even really put football, you know, taken football off the table yet. But, you know, the 4-game suspension made it sort of difficult to see like what that would look like. Even though a couple months later, I was getting calls from all these different teams. We were living at my in-laws' house in Pasadena while we were looking for a house in LA. And, you know, my wife had passed the bar, so she's figuring out like getting a job as an attorney. And so, you know, I was like, I had been turned over from my football agent to a book agent to start writing a book proposal. I had majored in creative writing at Arizona. Sometime in high school, I really fell in love with writing and the art of writing and telling stories. And so I had this throughout my football career. The interesting thing is, and it's sort of a tale of forewarning for young athletes, but I even, you know, was hesitant to identify myself wholly as a football player because I had this artistic background. You know, I had this idea, well, when I'm done playing football, I'm going to be a writer. So that's sort of what I started in on. And my wife goes, Eb, you've got a fucking stack of journals that you've been writing in since, you know, your freshman year of college. You've got a book here, dude.
Yeah.
You know, so it was thanks to her, you know, she really planted the seed, like writing a book is the next step. That's the logical next step. So I worked with this book agent. Meanwhile, I'm getting calls. I'm like working on this book proposal. I start getting calls like Atlanta, Buffalo, and they want to fly me out for a workout. And I'm like, okay, let me think about it. And, you know, by the end of the day, this was probably sometime in April or May, getting these phone calls. And I'm like, I can't bring myself to get on the airplane to fly there. You know, I would feel like I'm wasting my time just going to the airport and getting on a plane and flying there. You know, I'm done. I'm totally done. You know, so I started writing this book proposal. It's a beautiful book proposal. We pitched it around. There was a lot of interested publishers, but, you know, they had either filled their sports title for the year, or they wanted, more dirt or more of a red carpet story. I'm sort of the blue collar O lineman story. Like Charles Bukowski is an O lineman, and
Nice.
you know, it's it's pretty, grimy and in your face and violent, but it's not like anything out of the ordinary as far as what already about behind the scenes of the NFL. I wasn't going to call anyone out, etc. But so the book proposal sort of fell flat, but what it turned into was this article I wrote with Sports Illustrated, and it was a piece about basically my experience in the NFL dealing with injuries, prescription drug policies, my Adderall addiction, and sort of had a little bit about cannabis in there. And so it was really the beginning of this sort of truth teller mode, and it was really like, I don't know what else to say. I'm not one of these guys who I can just fake it through my life. I
Yeah.
can't, I can't go on, NBC or CBS and, play the fucking company man role of what this is.
Right.
When I understand the inner workings of it. And, the article I wrote got a lot of pub. You could probably share it on a link. It's on Medium.
Okay.
It was through the Cauldron, which was like a by athletes for athletes editorial section of Sports Illustrated. And I think it's titled, "What Does It Take to Make It in the NFL You Don't Want to Know?" I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah, I'll find it.
And that got a lot of attention. And it also, I got phone calls from my trainers in Jacksonville saying how pissed off they were about it.
What the fuck, Eben?
Yeah. And I was really like, dude, I don't, I'm sorry you feel that way. I did not feel like I was calling you guys out specifically. I didn't mention any of their names, but
yeah,
I was to the detail truthful in the practices, and what I experienced through that time, so that, that started me off.
Yeah. That sort of opened the door. I have a sense that like that may have been like okay, I've wanted to tell the truth. I feel better telling the truth. I'm going to speak my truth. I'm going to be open. That is, I think that's what is so admirable about where you're going and what you're doing. I mean, again, for people listening, just type in Mike Tyson Toad and understand the level of transparency and the way that you show up in the world, in your truth telling, in your openness, and in your honesty. There needs to be more and more people that do that. And for a guy like yourself who lived like a whole different kind of life and has transitioned now to a host of a podcast with Mike Tyson and writes and thinks and pontificates and shares truth. It's really, really inspiring. I'm curious about how you think about, I'm actually really curious about how you're thinking about this current paradigm that we're in with COVID. They're calling it a quarantine, but it's really a lockdown. How do you manage mentally? Just because I'm a fan of the way that you think and the way that you share your story. How do you, maybe it's not how does everybody else keep their shit together, but how do you keep your shit together in the midst of all of these global shenanigans?
Well, first of all, it's not easy.
No.
And I've had some massively dark days in the last month. you know, and, you know, first of all, I feel really blessed that I've put in an immense amount of work on myself over the last 5 years to put me in a place now where I can be a source or a place of stability for others, you know. And uh, you know, I think it's really fascinating where we are, you know, and you know, this place that I've ended up at is the result of literally 4 to 5 years of committed daily meditation practice, um, praying, connecting with spirit, connecting with my inner self, the source of who I am, doing really deep work like with Harold, you know, excavating old trauma through my physical body, um, you know, ayahuasca ceremonies, other plant medicine ceremonies. And it's really been about, you know, shaving away the shit. You know, everyone wants to like intellectualize and, you know, tell really cool stories about, you know, what ayahuasca trips are and what psilocybin trips are. And, you know, at the end of the day, what these substances do is they take you back to the core of you. It's all just comes back to you,
Yeah.
you know? And there's nothing outside of that, you know.
Yes.
It's just like who you are and what you're supposed to do here and what your life is all about. That's what it shows you, you know, and it allows you to just strip away all the shit, you know, because we're constantly like, and unless you're a person who's willing to do this type of work on yourself and do self-reflection and and commit to therapy and go into the really ugly places of yourself that scare you and, you know, acknowledge them, confront them, make peace with them, because
Hmm.
the truth is it's never going away.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Our fear, our anger, our anxiety, it's never going to go away. We're human beings. Like this is part of the stew that we are a part of.
Right.
So you might as well just become a master of it,
Yeah.
you know? So, you know, where I'm at right now is, and my journey with cannabis has sort of led along this as well, you know? So I became an advocate for cannabis. I should just throw this in there. And I got invited by one of my all-time heroes, this guy, Kyle Turley, who's really the tip of the spear. You know, a lot of people want to say it's Ricky Williams because he was like the guy that sort of stood up for himself during his playing days. And Ricky deserves a ton of credit, you know, for bringing all of this to the forefront. But Kyle has really been sort of the tip of the spear in his post-football career about medicinally what cannabis can offer football players and human beings in general.
Yeah.
So he called me up and he said, Ed, I'd like to invite you to come speak at this conference on a panel of a couple other football players. Tell your story about cannabis. And I said, all right. And at the time, you know, I was still pretty, hold on, let me close my door. Quarantine life, baby.
That's right, dude. That's right.
So, you know, at the time I was still sort of unsure. I was like, you know, intuitively, cannabis always felt right, but I didn't really have an understanding of what the medicine really was leading up to that. You know, I had my own personal experience, but outside of that, you know, I was super worried about anyone finding out I smoked weed, you know, or used cannabis and, you know, would call me a stoner, etc. You know, I was always like I was always a team captain and a leader. So I was very wary of my outer exposure of my cannabis use. So I said, yeah, sure, man. I mean, I'll just tell my story as far as what I've experienced. So I go to this conference, tell my story. I see the incredible wide range of people who cannabis has positively affected, from, you know, car crash survivors, cancer survivors, veterans, these children with intense seizure syndromes, which I'll get back to in a second because that's pertinent to this discussion. Um, Football players, traumatic brain injury survivors. And then to my left is Kyle Turley, and he starts reading the federal government's patent, 300,507, I believe is the patent. Cannabinoids as neuroprotectants and antioxidants.
Right.
And my fucking brain explodes. I'm blown away. It's the first time I've ever heard that our federal government has done scientific studies and research and have seen, scientifically have seen, because we always want the science and we always want the data and we always want the studies in this day and age. Our government has it on the medicinal benefits of the fucking chemical compounds that are found in the cannabis plant, these cannabinoids. They actually protect our brains prior to damage, and they help our brains heal after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Blows my mind, And so it lit this fire, this thirst of knowing and understanding. And so cannabis, just learning the history of it and how it was made illegal through the, Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 and the business interests that was really tied to. So fast forward, so here we are. And through that experience, I met all of these families. I met these women who were mothers of children who had these super intense neurological issues, whether it was Dravet syndrome, which is an intense seizure syndrome, or, other forms of just like devastating neurological incidents. These children can't speak, they can't feed themselves, they can't do anything, they're in wheelchairs, And all these mothers have found that cannabis oil has significantly, if not completely, erased the incidence of seizures in their children. It's been incredibly beneficial, helped their children to start to form words and to be able to speak, etc. Like amazing, fucking miraculous stuff. Charlotte Figge, the child who spawned Charlotte's Web, one of the most well-known, products on the market now. She just passed away from coronavirus, which is what they said.
Right.
She herself was taking this cannabis oil due to her seizure syndrome. She had Dravet's. So I'm meeting all these mothers, and I'm getting to know them. And every one of these mothers says that the issue started right after a vaccine. Now, you're a parent, I'm a parent. You're sort of like, I'm like, okay, and you start to talk to them, and there's no doubt in their mind, what caused this. They went to the doctor, got a vaccine immediately, if not, within a 3 to 12 hour period, the child started to decline into some sort of state that was alien to who that child was prior to that vaccine. So there's that, so there's that experience that I've seen with my own eyes. There was also a child when I was with the Jaguars, who this was like a kid that my teammate, Brad Meester, had sort of brought his family in because their son had, gone down this rabbit hole. I don't know what exactly they call it, but it's a severe neurological event, where they're paralyzed, So combining that with my experience, my own personal experience with pharmaceuticals, learning the operations of our medical establishment and the pharmaceutical system, this is a business. Pharmaceutical reps come into a doctor's office. They say, hey, brother, we've got these great pills. We've got these great medicines for you to offer your patients when they come in with X, Y, and Z. Here they are. The more you sell, the more you give away. We'll fly you to the fucking Caribbean at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And so there's this paradigm, and there's this blind faith. I'm sort of starting to go off a little bit on a tangent, but what I want to say is that there's a blind faith in our medical system, because no one who argues that vaccinations are an overwhelmingly good thing can point to actual evidence of that.
Yeah.
You're going on the blind faith that your doctor said it was good and necessary. And if you don't get it, your child's going to die. And you're not really going off of any of your own personal research, And so, you watch our mainstream media and you watch this thing, and I'm a man of the people, at the end of the day. I have no interest outside serving the greatest good of this thing called humanity, And, you watch the media and you watch the rhetoric and you see what's being talked about and what's being said. And then you go back and you look at the numbers. You look at the amount of people affected, you look at the number of deaths, and then you compare that to, say, the regular flu, for instance. Still not bad. The yearly flu, just basic influenza, kills somewhere between 60 and 100,000 people a year. Right now, we're looking at 45,000 deaths with coronavirus, I think is the latest number. And all of these deaths, by the way, and look, there's nothing, it's devastating, obviously. Death is devastating, and we've been, and it kind of goes back to this thing that that's really become clear to me, is our aversion to death, and our refusal to accept that death is a natural part of the life process, and it's a testament to our materiality that we live in, and I just think that it's very important. We're in a time that's it's crucially important for people to be skeptical.
Yes.
And to do your own research,
Yeah.
I mean, look, man, do you ever ask why? Like, ask why. Ask, ask, why are we here? What's going on? What's really happening?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
Right.
If I was looking outside and there were dead bodies in the street and it looked like absolute mayhem, and I had multiple family members sick, and I was seeing like really healthy, young people dying just in mass numbers, I would say, wow, we've got a real fucking issue here, But then, you look at, so I wrote this thing because I did a post about questioning Fauci's rhetoric about not ever being able to shake hands again. And, it's interesting to see the response. And for the most part, it was positive, and people really resonated with them. And my post was less about, I could give a fuck if we ever shake hands again. I really don't. I'm a hugger myself.
Yeah.
So like, I don't care. That's not the point. The point is And you'll appreciate this because this is something that Terence McKenna talks about as well. And I think he's dead on in this, is that language is really the process of our consciousness's evolution and pushing the boundaries of our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It begins with language. Well, it
Mm-hmm.
first begins with thought, and then it becomes language. And then language transcends, and you become what Terence would call a meme spreader.
Right.
So you start to push this rhetoric that we shouldn't be touching each other anymore.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be coming, it's not safe any longer to be coming into contact with each other.
Right.
This is a problem because that sends ripples
Yeah.
through the consciousness of humanity. And to guys like us who are awake, who understand, have a better understanding of what's happening and sort of the functionality of life from a bigger perspective than this, we can recognize it and say that's, you know, that's false. That's you know, that's fear spreading.
Yeah.
You know, this is a problem.
It's a problem.
This is a problem with the rhetoric. You know, and I've thought back to just my experience with great coaching. Great coaching never comes in the form of fear mongering. A great coach fills you with inspiration and energy and gives you the tools to be great on your own. They don't put you into a fear spiral, you know? And that's what we're looking at, man. And the rhetoric is just, you know, we're building ourselves into this corner where, you know, everyone wants to go, you're a conspiracy theorist. You know, why are you spreading misinformation? Dude, I'm not spreading misinformation. I'm looking at what's in front of me.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing the line from one dot to the next.
Yeah.
So I'll take this. So conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theory is a term invented by the CIA sometime after John F. Kennedy's assassination to discredit anyone, you know, going against the mainstream rhetoric, right? And this has been used. There's all this shit out there about it. So I'll use cannabis as a perfect example because in some circles, although now and I think it works because now cannabis has been so accepted, but you could say that the you know, putting cannabis into a Schedule 1 is a conspiracy, or there's a conspiracy behind that, or it's a conspiracy theory that, you know, they've demonized this plant for so long. Well, let's rewind, you know, let's take it back. First of all, cannabis is like a 10,000 plus year old medicine. That's just as far as we know of. You know, been used to treat everything from insomnia to impotence and everything in between. The fibers of the plant have over 25,000 industrial uses. At one time, it was the most valuable resource of the most powerful military operation in the world, the British Navy. You know, the War of 1812 was fought because Napoleon cut off Great Britain's hemp supply from Russia. That was one of the reasons they went to war. Cannabis was a well-known, very widely used aspect of the American pharmacopoeia up until 1937. You could go to the local pharmacy, you could get cannabis tinctures, oils, etc., to treat all sorts of things. There were hashish parlors all over the place. Henry Ford was making car parts out of hemp fibers that were more durable, lighter, stronger than the steel that he had been previously using. So what happens? In 1937, you've got William Randolph Hearst, who owns a shitload of paper tree farms. He's the largest publisher in the world, probably. And then you've got the DuPont family, steel and oil. And they come together with Harry Anslinger, who's the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, now known as the DEA. And they create the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act. And they basically make the production, cultivation, and sale of cannabis illegal. Now, is this a conspiracy or is this business? This is fucking business for these guys. They didn't give a fuck. They didn't care. They cared up until the point when it started to infringe on their business interests, selling more paper, making more paper products, and selling and building with steel, using steel as the, used materials of the time. And then you combine that with Harry Anslinger's racist ideology and his beliefs. And he's like, yeah, let's demonize the blacks and the Mexicans. Let's say that this is a danger to society. And then that gets carried over with Nixon. And Nixon's two, biggest rivalry groups at the time were African Americans and the hippies. So what did he do? He demonized both cultures. Went on a drug war against both, raiding homes, imprisoning people, etc. So is this a conspiracy or is this just business? It's business.
Yeah.
So then you start to look at our situation now. And you see who's involved. Is it a conspiracy to say that Bill Gates has a business interest in spreading the use of vaccines? No.
No.
He's invested billions of dollars into it.
Yeah.
Fauci's been tied to the same shit for a long time as well.
Yeah.
They have business interests. But you go against that, and it's this is our modern day Salem witch hunt.
Yeah.
You're a maniac.
Right.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, are you sure? Or are you just going on the blind faith because you're too scared to think about the possibility that maybe the people telling you what you should and shouldn't be putting in your body don't really know anything.
Right. And don't really care about whether or not you're safe.
And don't care because you've been a number since day one.
Right. Oof.
And so
that connection, Eben, is so great. And I had not really put those two together. I had not really made the connection between the demonization and criminalization of cannabis and the correlation between Big Pharma, Bill Gates, and the fact that they don't want to consider that hydrochloroquine works because they want to rush a unicorn vaccine to market that they're going to somehow force into the arm of every living being, every human being on planet Earth with rushed testing. Like, to what end? And to make that connection with cannabis it's so clear to me. It's like, when you start asking these questions and you start just like, what we're doing is we're just having a conversation around it. We're just talking, right? We're just talking about it. And as soon as that violates someone's sense of security, I'm going to eat Cheetos and sleep like shit. And I'm going to wait for a vaccine because a vaccine will save me. It's like, come on, guys. What you're really saying is, I trust Bill Gates, the CDC, and the World Health Organization with my life. And if you try to say anything against that, you're nothing but a no good science denier, conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
That's what people are saying. Smart people I know, people friends of yours, family members. And to even have the conversation is such a taboo. And I want to be able to say to my grandkids that they didn't fool me, right? I want to be on the right side of history. Like, I did
Absolutely,
podcasts.
man.
I did podcasts with Eben Britton. I did podcasts with Del Bigtree. I did podcasts with people that saw through it and thought critically about what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, I'm just, I go through, and I go through really dark periods, man. I've
Hmm.
had some days where, God, I don't even know what to do,
Hmm.
But then I'm fueled with inspiration and energy because I'm not alone. We are not alone. There's an army of people out there who believe in the power of the human being.
Yeah.
And that's what this really comes down to,
Right.
And everything I've done in my fucking whole life is about realizing my own personal fucking power, you know? God bless my parents, man. You eat right, you exercise, you drink plenty of water, you have some sort of connection with a higher power. And you know what? Shit kind of takes care of itself. Your body works.
Yeah. Your body works.
This body is a fucking miracle, man.
Yeah.
Like it was built perfectly
Yeah.
to withstand immense amounts of shit,
Hmm.
trauma, viruses. That's the other thing that's so mind boggling to me is like, okay, so we're going to make this fucking vaccine, right? Well, I don't get it because there's going to be more viruses. There's going to be more bacteria. Like,
Oh yeah.
since the dawn of time, we have grown and evolved with bacteria and germs and viruses, coexisted, lived alongside of.
Right.
And that's never like, when did we just become so feeble and weak and helpless that we can't survive without a vaccine? What?
It's
You know?
super disempowering, and it's super disempowering to the humanity. It's disempowering to the individual, and what it does is it makes people scared. And when people are scared and fearful, what happens? Their immunity goes down. When you're in a fight or flight state, uh, you're more susceptible to be sick from just about anything. Like that. I think people are missing that a little bit too,
Yeah.
and to not have faith that your body is strong and capable. We were really hoping. I went and got tested for the antibodies a week and a half ago. Just went down to a LabCorp and they did the pinprick
Yeah.
test. Because I there was like 2 days where I had the chills. I'm in Seattle, so it's still cold. Had the chills and like had some body aches for like 2 days, and it was a little
Mhm.
strange. So I went and got tested, and I was really, really hoping that I had it. I was really, really, really hoping, because I was kissing my kids and sharing drinks and cuddling, and
Uh, yeah.
like I was really hoping that I had it so that I could build a lifelong immunity, because there's going to be a COVID 20 and a 21 and a
Yeah.
22, and the flu shots don't fucking work, and
Yeah.
they make you more susceptible to a negative response from the actual virus.
Yeah.
And if
Forget
you,
about trying to share that too.
yeah,
People
right,
just like don't buy it.
right,
I get
right.
I get sent links of, the Bobby Kennedy article written by his family members saying, "We love him, but he's our uncle, but here's why he's wrong." It's like, dude, the guy's sharing the same science. He's
Yeah,
sharing science. What do you want?
right.
Are you blind? Like,
Yeah,
what are we looking at?
yeah,
I feel like I'm back in the cannabis thing, you know? Because when I came into the cannabis advocacy, everyone's like, oh, you just want to be a stoner and smoke weed. It's like, no, I'm looking at science here.
yeah,
I'm looking at, thousands of years of anecdotal evidence, people describing how this shit benefits. And then there's scientific studies now. Our government has them, you know? And I just, it's what it is it's all dogmatic, you
yeah,
know? The science people want to shout that the religious people are the dogmatic nuts,
yeah.
but science is as much of a dogma as religion.
Totally true.
It's all dogma, you
Right.
know? This really, the theory, it's a theory of how viruses work.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Yes. Yes, you're right.
These are
Yeah.
theories.
This is Koch's postulate and Louis Pasteur plagiarizing the other guy.
I'm sorry, guys. Look, that's what it is. It's
Yeah.
still theories,
Yeah.
you know? At the end of the day, it's all just theories on how the world around us functions
Mm-hmm.
because you can't see what's happening. Okay, great. You isolate 1 million COVID particles in a room in a vacuum and you see what it does. Wow, big fucking deal.
Mm-hmm.
Put a human, you can't, even if you put a human being in there, you couldn't watch what happened.
Right.
You can't.
Mm-hmm.
So all this shit about what our experts are saying, which I'd love to know who the experts are anyway. Is it Fauci and Bill Gates? If those are experts, those guys have business interests. Again, I don't think you can be an expert on a situation and have a business interest tied to the situation.
Yes. Yeah. And meanwhile, the CDC, the World Health Organization, isn't promoting healthy immune boosting protocols, natural uh, health protocols for boosting your immune system. Like it's still not talked about. And some of my friends in the natural health world, like Dr. Ben Lynch and Mike Mutzel, they're like, well, what? Okay, so not only is this getting out of hand, but also like we're not actually talking about what people can do to naturally boost their immunity, like get vitamin D, like being outside when we're not supposed to be being outside, like vitamin C, like vitamin A. I don't know if
Don't
you're
eat processed shit.
right. Exactly. No,
Try
no.
going for a walk. Try taking some deep breaths. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
none of
Yeah.
that. None of that is acceptable.
Well, us even having this conversation and reaching the audience that I have, and I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm going to keep bringing it up because unless folks like me and you and some of the even louder proponent or critics, with even louder megaphones and even more political prowess, like we just have to keep talking about it. We have to be clear. We have to be able to think critically and really focus on our own personal empowerment, because if we don't, then we will have missed an opportunity to try to make a difference. So,
Yeah.
well, I really appreciate it. I
Yeah, man.
appreciate this
It's true,
conversation.
dude. Just I don't know, one more thing. I had it. It's just about taking ownership of your life. You know, how deep in that are you willing to go? Because we've been convinced. What's so funny to me is that, we've been convinced that, life is so fragile and death is so taboo. And yet no one's living for shit. You're living to fucking buy and consume shit. And you're living someone else's dream. Like, cut that shit out, man. When are you going to take ownership of your own life? Rather than just blind faith say, yeah, I never understood this. God bless doctors. I've had some incredible surgeons. I've had some great doctors in my life. But to be honest, the fundamental part of medicine should be, your body better than anyone else does. You're the one fucking living in it. It's only when you've just become so disillusioned with the experience of being a human that you forget about paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
I eat this. How do I feel? Do I feel good or do I feel like shit?
All right.
You know, most people can't even get there.
Right.
You know, you're just like guzzling sodas and eating fast food, and you're going, man, I'm a diabetic, I'm obese, I feel like shit. I guess I need a pill or something.
Right.
No, you need to stop eating the shit, you know, because it matters. Like everything matters,
Yeah.
you know. So
I want to ask, because I do like to close. This has been a really great conversation. I wish we had a few more hours, because
yeah.
maybe
Well,
we'll
I'll
have to do,
come back,
yeah,
man.
I'll have to do
Anytime.
part two.
Yeah.
Um, uh, anything before I ask the last question, which is a fill in the blank question. Is there anything that you would like to speak out if people want to get in contact with you or follow you, or any sort of group that you want to advocate for? Please share.
Yeah. Follow me on Instagram at EDS Britton. That's my main platform. I do a little bit on Twitter, but that's for the most part. And also, EbenBritton.com. You can find. I do a lot of writing and a lot of musings on these various topics. So head there, check that out, subscribe, and other than that, check out my organization, Athletes for Care, which is a cannabis advocacy group for athletes of all ages. To come in and get education, resources, have access to resources, and come into an incredible community of people who believe in the power of natural healing and community.
Beautiful. Okay, so if you would fill in the blank and elaborate as much as you'd like. I know this catch people's off, but fuck. Okay, whatever. It's funny with like doctors and authors, like, yeah, it's going to catch you off guard, fill in the blank. And they're just like, oh no, got to break script. Feel free to elaborate as much as you'd like, but please, based on everything that you know, fill in the blank. Everyone would benefit from knowing.
Themselves.
Beautiful.
I think I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. Eben Britton, thank you so much for joining me today on the Optimal Performance Podcast.
Thanks, Sean.
Awesome. That was great.
Dude, you're the man.